Xaviera Hollander haalde een toneelstuk en een acteur naar Nederland waarvan we u een klein stukje gaan laten zien. Zijn naam was Kerry Shale. Het stuk heette The Prince of West End Avenue en het heeft een duidelijk Joodse toon.
Oh, believe you me, Mrs. DeVinowitz, Miss Doubler is in tip-top shape.
You should pardon me, sweetheart, but get them to fix you up with an extra portion luxury cooker at supper tonight. Tomorrow, I'll bring you some nice chocolate brownies.
La Davidovitz tips the scales at over 200 pounds. 83 years of age, she was wearing a pink Mickey Mouse sweatsuit. Cummins next approached my dear friend Benno Hamburger. How to capture Benno? Benno.
Charm, my dear. You possess, if I may be so bold, the face of an angel. It radiates with some inner light. Welcome.
Yes, straight poetic, Mr. Hamburger, but Miss Doubler and I must move on. This physical therapy business, sweetheart, you don't mind me asking, how much you clear per annum after taxes? Huh? Oh, me, Nachum Lipschitz, voice grave digger. You can call me Nachum. Ooh, that's a nice uniform. Say, you need a new sweater? My son has the business now, but I happen to know he's just snapped up a consignment of slightly substandard double lids. Straight from Korea, no middleman, I'll make you a deal. You don't like it, I'll make you a better deal. My motto is this, a deal's a deal, it's no big deal. I'm on the second floor, sweetheart, here's my car. Go on, take the car. Yes, thank you, Nachum. And so, in behalf of all of us, a warm welcome to the newest, youngest, and surely prettiest member of the Emma Lazarus staff.
Mandy Detmer. Magda Damrosch. In over 60 years, she has not aged by so much as a single white hair.
We've just finished a most magnificent performance of The Prince of West End Avenue. Kerry, could you tell me, how did this play come about?
I read the novel, The Prince of West End Avenue, by Alan Isler, which I think is available all over Europe. And I turned to my wife and told her, well, I was in tears, and I said it was a wonderful book, one of the best books I'd ever read. And she said, why don't you make it into a one-man show? Because this is my 5th one-man show, or solo play, or whatever you want to call it. And I became tired of doing these one-man shows, and I told her I didn't want to do another one. I really had no... they're so hard, and they take a year or two of your life, and I had no desire to ever do another one. But I'd done all the other 4 before I'd met her. I'd been doing them for like 15 years. We'd been together for a couple of years at that point. And anyway, she convinced me that I should do it because she basically wanted to see it done. she wanted to see the process, and I thought it's kind of a personal thing. I'd had a difficult time doing the others. It'd been really difficult and painful, and I wanted to do a show that actually didn't land me in hospital, which one of the shows did, and didn't destroy my relationship, which one of the shows did. I wanted to see if I could do that. So, and funnily enough, because it's a very funny show, but it has a very serious message, and whereas my other shows were kind of like comedies, and I was miserable doing those shows, but I'm actually really enjoying doing this show. And that's a long-winded sort of answer.
Well, in this show, you play an 84-year-old man and any number of different characters. I'm not even sure how, but all of them in a nursing home. I noticed when I was looking to the stage that you actually transform for each of the characters in some way. So, I mean, it must... what is that process of doing one man does multiple characters, including women?
Well, it's just this. It's actually just normal acting, or what actors do. It's just that I'm playing 14 characters. So instead of playing one character, because I'm a character actor, because I'm not Tom Cruise, who sort of plays the same character all the time, within a narrow range. He's very good at playing a leading man, but I don't play leading men. I always play kind of eccentric and interesting and different characters. So in this play, I play 14 of them instead of just one of them. So I treat each character as if I was preparing a character for a play. And I prepare the character, I think about how they walk, how they talk, how they move. And I proceed to play all of them at once. So it's not kind of mysterious to me. And I don't actually look in the mirror or anything like that to see what they look like. Everybody tells me that my face changes. And I'm aware that my body changes, because I worked on that. But I don't work on the facial changes. It sort of comes with the voice. And I don't want to see the faces, actually. I've seen them in pictures, but they sort of do themselves. They sort of create themselves. They sort of come by themselves. So I'm happy to do it that way.
Have your previous plays had Jewish themes, or is this the first time?
No, this is the first time. Although I'm Jewish, I've done maybe 3 or 4 things in my career, and I've been acting for over 20 years. Yentl, which is the ultimate Jewish film, which I did years ago, and a few other things. But it was the book that spoke to me because partially of its Jewish content, just because I got a chance to use my family background and I could base some characters on my family. But mostly because it was a terrific piece of writing about a man who is tortured by an act that he committed in the past and can't see any way out of his life. He knows he's going to die, and he knows he's going to die without forgiving himself, without understanding himself. So that I found, even though I'm not anywhere near 84, it's something that I think most people have to deal with. That maybe they've done something that they really regret. His crime was terrible, but I'm making it sound like it's not a comedy, which in fact it is. It's very, very funny for about the first 3 quarters anyway. And I laughed out loud a lot reading the book, and I laugh out loud sometimes in rehearsal. But anyway, it appealed to me just because it's a good piece of work. And all the shows that I've done have been really interesting pieces of work. And that's the only reason that I choose to devote a year of my life, or 2 sometimes, or 3 even, to these various pieces of work. And if I once made the mistake of one of my one-man shows, I've always adapted them from novels. So I've always turned them from novels into plays. And once I was asked to do a one-man show which existed already and had been done before, because all my things are world premieres, they've never been done before. And that was a mistake, because I did it because it was a kind of I thought it would be good for my career.
That Magda went up in smoke at Auschwitz, but the arrival of Mandy Detmer here cannot be accidental. There must be some purpose. I write once more to see if I can find it. It is time for this afternoon's emergency meeting of the Old Vic Company, in which I intend to reveal that I have committed the role of the prince to memory. In fact, I have been reading and rereading it nightly in an attempt to pluck the heart from Shakespeare's fascinating mystery. Should I be offered the part, I will of course accept. As Hamlet himself concludes in Act 5, Scene 2, the readiness is all. Well, we've had our little gathering, but instead of a discussion, we were presented with a fait accompli. I have been usurped by Nahum Lipschitz. So, when Adolf begged me to take over, if anything should happen to him, it was a deal I couldn't refuse. Okay, that's it. He was a hell of a guy, and a great poker player. Let's not let him down.
Nahum, Nachum, if you play Hamlet, who plays your part?
Ooh, I'm glad you asked, Pascal, because Adolf thought of that too. He sent for Otto Korner to replace me as the first gravedigger. So, if there's no other questions, Hamburger.
What kind of shit are you talking? Otto Korner is a man of dignity. The first gravedigger is a low comedian. Better Korner plays the prince, and you Lipschitz play the clown.
Hey, don't bust.
Well, you said that the play was a comedy for the first three parts, or three-quarters of it. Tonight, there was a smattering of laughter.
Yeah.
And this is the first time you've played on the continent.
Yeah.
This play that actually has the tragic part of it takes place on the continent and is very relevant today as it was 50 years ago. Huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think of playing in Holland? Or I mean, is there?
Well, it's interesting. This is the first. I haven't done the show for a year, and I did it for 2 performances in England last week or a little while ago, and I think the sense of humor is, I think, I suspect, different. There's lots of little verbal jokes and clever wordplay and things, which I think probably is just very difficult to if you don't speak fluent English. I mean, I found that eventually I slowed down and eventually the audience started laughing. It was probably my fault for going a bit fast. And also, it's quite a complicated piece. You have to really listen. It's important to really pay very close attention, because it's like Shakespeare, actually. And there's some Shakespeare in it, because it's about a performance of Hamlet in a Jewish old folks home. So I do quote Hamlet and play a bit of Shakespeare, but in English. I'm sure Shakespeare is as big here as it is everywhere, but this is in English. So it rewards patience, the play, and funnily enough, in the second act, everybody started laughing. And I thought, interesting, because about halfway through the second act, I do things that make them stop laughing. And that was good, because that's what always happens when I've done it in Britain. Because people are laughing, they're laughing, and then all of a sudden they kind of stop laughing. They think, but I want to keep laughing. And then I let them laugh a bit more, and then they do have to stop laughing. And theatrically, it's quite interesting. And that's something that I'm very fond of doing, if I can, is making a serious point through comedy, rather than just making serious point over and over again. That's not the sort of theater that I like, because that tends to be a bit dull and worthy. And I think this play, you don't know what's going to happen next. That's why I like the book. You just don't know what's going to happen next. It's very mysterious, and I think very intriguing, and kind of somewhat shocking. And so I'm going to learn valuable lessons here. I've got 4 more performances in Holland, and I'll tell you, in the second act, I know I'm going on and on, but in the second act, I stopped worrying about getting laughs, which is, I don't have to worry about that when I do it to an English-speaking audience. And when I stopped worrying about getting laughs, I contacted the play again, and I was right in the play again, and I wasn't worried about things like getting laughs and stuff. And so I stopped thinking about the audience, and then the audience started laughing. And then it's a very zen sort of experience. And they were laughing, and I thought, well, they can laugh if they want, or they can not laugh if they want. I'm just telling the story, and I'm not. All I want to do is just be sort of in the story. So for me, it was actually the second act, a very good performance, because the first act had been quite difficult for me. Everybody tells me that they enjoyed it regardless, but and I believe that. But it's interesting to learn and to make it better.
Now, You said you initially read this as a novel, and then you decided to adapt it to a play. Do you do the adaptation yourself, or do you collaborate with somebody, or how does this come about?
I always do the adaptation of the novels by myself. I just taught myself how to do it. The first one that I did was a book called A Confederacy of Dunces. Don't know if you know it. But it's
Beautiful book.
It's a wonderful book, and an incredibly difficult book to adapt. I mean, they've been trying to make a film of it for 15 years. It was the first one I did 15 years ago, and they still haven't made a film of it. Nobody can write a screenplay. So by doing that, it's about a 350-page book with teeny print. That's something that only a complete sort of a novice would attempt. I mean, to say that, like, I didn't know how. It's like adapting Moby Dick or Dostoevsky or something. It's very, very difficult. So, and everybody told me I was mad, and all my friends read it, and that one had about 20 characters, and they said, "You need a full cast of people. You'll never do this by yourself." And I felt that I could do it. I could see my way to doing it. So I did it, and then after that, I did another one, and after that another one, and so I taught myself the art of adaptation. I think I've improved with, particularly with this one, because I write a lot of the material myself. I don't just cut it up, and I do a bit what people do for films. In that I find a strong plot line that I want to go with. If you ever read the book, you'll see that there's not only masses of stuff that I've left out, but I've combined characters, I've dropped lots of characters, I've even changed the plot somewhat, although the last 15 minutes or so is more or less intact. But I've now done writers' workshops and things and studied plot structure and things like that. So I do think it's all getting better.
Well, I can say this was an extraordinary play. So if this is the accumulation of your work, then it's marvelous. The other thing I wanted to ask, I noticed in your credits that you had played also in films. What films have you been in?
Well, the ones I always quote on my CV are Yentl and Little Shop of Horrors and Who Framed Roger Rabbit, because those are the sort of big Hollywood films. They were all shot in England. But I've done about a dozen other films, sometimes quite small British films, but good films, I think. Sometimes better films. I did a film called Jude, based on Jude the Obscure by Thomas Hardy, which was a good film, but not a big film. And I did a film called Welcome to Sarajevo, which was shot in Sarajevo.
I saw that one.
Did you? Yeah. Well, I played this UN agency guy who helped the kids escape in the bus. And that was a fascinating film because we shot it in Sarajevo. We went in about 6 weeks after the war, and it was extraordinary. We stayed at the Holiday Inn that might have seen on CNN being constantly bombed. We were actually in there, and there was only a few floors that were functioning. It was, it was extraordinary. I mean, I love film work generally, especially if you get to go to exotic places and stuff. Often you're sort of filming in a disused peach factory or something. But and I've got a few films that are going to be coming out in the next year, but you never know when, and you won't have heard of them because they haven't come out yet. I remember when I did Who Framed Roger Rabbit, I told people I did this film called Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and they went, that is the stupidest name for a film I've ever heard of, and they could never remember it either. They said, and I told them what it was about, all these cartoons interacting with humans, and they couldn't understand what I was talking about. And then it took a year before it came out, and then they said, did you say something about that? Was that the film that you... Because films take so long to come out, so... I mean, unless you say something like, I'm in the new Barbra Streisand film, then everybody goes, ooh, Barbra Streisand, who, by the way, is extremely nice. Everybody asks me, what's she like? To us, I played one of the yeshiva boys who was hanging around when she was studying to be a rabbi. And so I sort of come in and come out and come in and come out. I'm sort of hanging around. And to us, she was very nice. To most people, she was very nice. She drove some people crazy because she would do 40 takes, which is a lot of takes in a film. I mean, it's actually unheard of. And she would do that often, almost all the time. And the only other person who does that is Stanley Kubrick.
Who has a new film?
Well, he's been doing that film for 2 years.
out there in the 2-year land or 3-year land, yeah. With Tom Cruise's wife and.
With Tom Cruise and his wife.
And his wife,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
I actually did. I've worked with him, but not on a film. I did the TV trailers for Full Metal Jacket, which was his last film, but it was like 10 years ago. Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah.
What a catastrophe of a life. I started at the pinnacle. At the age of 19, already a published book of poetry. Oh, the exaltation as I held my new offspring for the first time. Its crisp freshness is still in my nostrils, the riffle of its pages in my ears. The reviewers were generous. A bright future was forecast. And then to have immediately submitted an article on poetry to the cultural editor of the Nürnberger Freie Presse. This required an impudence, a chutzpah that still leaves me breathless. In 1914, this newspaper spoke with an authority in Europe matched only by the Times of London. Their cultural section was of such importance, it occupied the bottom half of the front page, and yet they published my article, and even suggested a series of articles. I was only 19. 19 for heaven's sake. The moment in the breakfast room that morning was the happiest of my life. We sit around the table. Father tells Mother how well the firm is doing. Mother murmurs appreciatively. I speak when spoken to. Polished wood, white linen, gleaming silverware, a warm breeze fluttering the curtains. The breakfast smells mingle with the aroma of my father's cigar. In comes Katie, the maid, with the newspaper. She puts it on the table at my father's left hand. I feel my knees begin to tremble. A little more coffee, Katie, if you please, says Mother. Father glances at the front page of his paper. Consternation! There before him is the name of his own son, an undersized boy whose opinions he has automatically dismissed until this moment. As he reads, I laugh out loud with delight. That article was preserved under glass. First in my father's study, then in my own. It is with me still, tucked carefully into a yellowed envelope that bears the insignia of the old corner stationery company, filed safely away in my bureau drawer with the pocket handkerchiefs.